Buenas tardes. Es un gusto darle la bienvenida en representación de los organizadores de este evento.
Good afternoon. For me, it's a pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the co-organizers of COP19, the full coalition led by the Program of the United Nations on the Environment and the Climate Championship. This is a track event that is focused on the global actions and the increase of the ambition to have access to a sustainable cooling on our way to COP28. Towards a cool cup. And cool cup sounds cooler and cool cup to a cool cup. And on behalf of myself and the energy team for Climate Champions, I'm going to be your moderator during today's discussion of such an important topic for adaptation and mitigation of climate change. In this session, we will have the opportunity to listen to distinguished specialists, especially Martina Otto of the Secretariat of the Climate Cleaner Coalition, the Secretariat of the Environment, that is going to give us a few opening remarks, and then we're going to have Maria Schwartzman, specialist for youth engagement, COP28 for the UAE, that is going to give us a keynote speech, making a call to action to the public sector as well as the private sector to implement the global cooling pledge from now to on our way to COP28, and then we'll move on to a panel discussion focus on how to catalyze and enable regional transition to sustainable cooling. And then we will have a Q&A session after the panel. I would like to, first of all, give opening remarks. Welcome to Ms. Martina Otto, Head of Secretariat Climate and Clean Air Coalition, United Nations Environment Program. And she's going to give us her opening remarks regarding the situation and the challenges that represent cooling in the countries in our regions, and then about the need of performing a coordinated approach and the global agreement to the solution. Martina, the floor is yours. Muchas gracias, estoy feliz de estar aquí. Estoy aquí representando a mis colegas que han estado trabajando fuertemente y obviamente dentro del programa del tema de hoy es de gran importancia para esta región, tanto desde el lado de mitigación y adaptación y también para una perspectiva mucho más amplia. Hemos visto el incremento de temperatura por un promedio de 0.2 grados a lo largo de los últimos 30 años, y esa es la tasa más alta retratadas. Nosotros no, la región sabe que tenemos una tendencia a temperaturas elevadas. El niño está subiendo la temperatura y está trayendo eventos climáticos mucho más extremos, y también tenemos una rápida urbanización, un crecimiento en el PIB. La demanda para refrigeración está creciendo. Para el 2050 vamos a tener 4.5 aires acondicionados proyectados globalmente que van a eso significa emisiones que del sector van a duplicarse y triplicarse hasta el 7%. Esto significa de que el crecimiento y el enfriamiento están guiando el cambio climático, lo cual incrementa la necesidad para el enfriamiento, y es un círculo vicioso al cual entramos y debemos de romper, y no hay un solo actor que va a poder atacar esto inmediatamente, y necesitamos una respuesta multisectorial y multisistémica. Estando solamente a la orilla de eso no va a ser suficiente. Y si este es el mensaje, el enfriamiento sostenible puede ser realizado aquí. UNEP junto con AIA hemos armado una una manera de poder tener un enfriamiento amigable para todos ustedes. Serán de 4 a 8 años para poder reducir las emisiones globales para el 2050. Ese es un número grande y aparte de los beneficios climáticos, podemos
by avoiding building up to 2.5 medium-sized peak power plants with a 30% improvement in energy efficiency of room air conditioners alone. Besides the cost benefit, we can also have a well-being benefit. The building sector represents a huge opportunity to reduce the needs for cooling, and looking at thermal comfort rather than space cooling is a way forward as well. Passive approaches that can reduce the need for active cooling by up to 40%. And last but not least, bringing nature back into our cities. By planting trees and putting green roofs on buildings, we can reduce
árboles y podemos reducir las temperaturas urbanas hasta por 4 grados. Y también esto está creando algunos espacios recreativos. Así es que el enfriamiento es una oportunidad de cómo podemos integrar las respuestas para mitigación, adaptación, y para que eso funcione necesitamos una mezcla de políticas, innovación, finanzas, y necesitamos que
and improve energy efficiency to increase the affordability of best available technologies which exist in the market today and to unlock investment in innovation. And there are a number of examples in this region, so are really trailblazing already. Countries in the region, including Panama and Cuba, are leading the way through their national cooling action plans. They provide a comprehensive strategy for the transition to climate-friendly and efficient cooling. And Brazil, for example, is currently developing a cooling strategy as well. Latin America and the Caribbean are already involved in the growth of conventional cold chain technologies. And the challenge here lies now in innovating cold chains to reduce their energy use and minimize pollution. Setting higher efficiency standards for air conditioners and cooling equipment is one of the easiest steps that governments can take to reduce the need for new power plants, cut emissions, improve air quality, and reduce costs at the same time. And there's innovative solutions as well in nature and in building design. And the Cool Coalition is working with the government of Colombia, for example, to promote district cooling, which is 10 times more energy efficient than conventional cooling. District cooling lowers CO2 emissions on the one side, operating costs, and also improves the balance between the peak hours and allows the integration of renewables as well. So it's a critical step to a transition towards more renewables as well. And the building design with passive and nature-based solutions offers great potential for mitigation and adaptation. And here, just to mention another figure, and I've been bombarding you with figures, green roofs can cut energy use by 10 to 15%. So with all of that, I hope I've given not only the challenge, laid out the challenge,
that cool coalition. The pledge has been developed through exclusive consultations globally. As you can see, we have consulted at the Indian G20 Energy Transitions Working Groups, as well as the SDG Regional Forums, the Clean Energy Ministerials, and Bonn Climate Change Summits. We've also held closed-door meetings with over 40 countries. In this slide, you can see the flags of the countries that have been engaged to date, and you can see several flags from the regions, and also we have performed consults with over 100 state actors. Consultations culminated in G20 Energy Ministerials, the 14th Clean Energy Ministerials, and 8th Mission Innovations in Goa, India, where COP28 Dr. President designate along with Indian and Danish ministers and partners united to champion sustainable cooling and call and ask them to join the cooling allow them to join the Global Cooling Pledge. The Global Cooling Pledge has been negotiated by a number of countries, including Panama. The pledge includes, among others, commitments to increase access to sustainable cooling by 2030 and increase the average efficiency rating of new air conditioning equipment, and it also invites participants to support the phase down of HFS and equipments in the energy. This has become an energy models for construction, developing national cooling action plans, equivalent and increasing nature-based solutions for the cooling of urban environments. In this slide, we can show you a summarized selection of commitment outlined in the pledge. Today, we would like to keep building consensus and mobilize more champions to join us. We need the support of the Latin America and the Caribbean community as leaders in your countries in terms of cooling. And let's work together to ensure that cooling is high in the agenda of COP28. Greater coordination would enable us to make COP28 the cool COP. And we're going to stop this joke for the remainder of the session. I am very happy to see many of the countries who have been engaged in the pledge today, such as Dominican Republic and Panama, along champions like the U.S. We are looking forward to build on the outcomes of the event and to help sustainable for economy, and it will help us to preserve the planet. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, Azul, por tu intervención. Felicitaciones.
Thank you very much for your intervention, and thank you for congratulations for your presidency of COP28 and the countries that have joined us in this initiative. And I would like to invite all the parties to join us and to support their implementation. Now I would like to invite you to this panel with specialists that are going to help us to things linked to how can we facilitate this transition, how can we enable this transition to sustainable cooling. We're going to have a hybrid panel. We will have two colleagues that are here on the room and two colleagues that will be joining us online. I would like to welcome the subsecretariat, the Undersecretary for National Energy Secretariat of Panama, Ms. Rosilena Lindo, the Director of Climate Change and Risk Management and Ministry, Mr. Merardo Cadena, Director of Studies Projects, Samira Souza, National Coordinator of Energy Efficiency, Ministry of Mines and Energy in Brazil, that is going to be joining us virtually. I hope that we can see her in a minute. Mr. David Villar, Senior Energy Specialist and Program Leader for Infrastructure in Central America, World Bank Group. Welcome, Samira and David. Do we know if they've joined and can they hear us? I will take a seat in the meantime, and well, we know, as Martina and Maria have mentioned, the countries from Latin America and the Caribbean are facing climate change and increasing the and talking about the increase of heat waves, and we could see that the increase of the temperatures and also an increase on the demand of power for energy and the things that will accept that affect all of the distribution sectors, and therefore, and we know that it's crucial for everyone, and also to it affects the productivity and the resilience and energy systems, in particular, not just for the offer and generation, but also for distribution. We just heard Martina mention a few minutes ago about the need of strengthen the international coordination to promote a sustainable cooling and to keep it under lower degrees for this. And I would like to start with something else. Rosilena, and we've become friends in previous panels, but we know that the action plan for cooling in Panama is emphasizing a lot in the participation of the private sector and of the general audience to make sure that this is materialized for the objectives of the plan. What is Panama doing to facilitate this and to accelerate a sustainable transition? Thank you, Luciano, for sharing once again a space with me to talk about the challenges of energy transitions. And I'm really loving the emphasis of this panel to be able to facilitate the role that energy efficiency is having and the cooling spaces here in Panama. As you could see here, one of the strongest demands that our country has is in cooling, and actually the total use of energy that is produced in Panama, 42% is used on cooling. So this means that we do want to go, if we want to think of an effective energy, and the cooling has to be a part of this, and they are a part of this. In the year 2020, Panama approves the energy transition agenda, and it gives a very important role, not just to cooling, but of energies. And we have a national strategy, and we have an efficient use that has eight line actions that are specific for Panama, and we keep on working on this topic. Prior to this strategy, and since 2012, we are celebrated that just a few weeks ago, we've already approved a technical regulation for Central American topics and topics of cooling air conditioners and freezers, and every degree that we everything that we can do for an efficient demand contributes not just to the cooling pledge, but also to facilitate that we are able to approach the challenge of energy security in an ever-changing climate in the midst of what represents right now El Niño phenomenon. And it's very important to highlight that in order for us to ensure and maximize the compliance of these goals in Panama, we have the goal to reduce 15% of the energy consumptions, that it's electrical and national. And in order to achieve this, we need the companies, the professionals, to be able to increase their possibilities and the certification of industrial processes. This is why yesterday we kickstarted 2 trainings with approximately 52 professionals, Panamanians and from El Salvador, financed with the support of IACID and Euroclima Plus, to be able to identify professionals in topics of ISO 50,002 and 50,006, as well as the training of capacities of efficient process and innovations in the industry. We just started 2 days ago, and tomorrow we will conclude another training process in management systems of energy efficiency, where 30 Panamanians have being awarded a scholarship so we can have the so we can consider the challenges that this has, and we are working hand in hand with the distributors of the technology so they can let that inventory and they can update the new technologies that are more efficient. And we are in collaboration not just with the Ministry of Environment, but with the Ministry of Health, that it's also providing the ministry, working with the Protocol Ministry of Montreal, and we could take ownership of the technologies, and we can be working for almost 2 years raising awareness at all levels. We are visiting malls massively to explain the importance, one, of the electrical bill, and to explain people in the Panamanian language, in their common language, how to get to a purchasing center and understand what those energy efficiency labels say. And we are doing these labels. And when we start doing this work, we were approached by the Union of Women of domestic workers, and we work with that every day, and we want to be a part of this. So we have a specific session with people that support as domestic worker or manual workers, and we had the workers from the Ministry of Health and with the National Center. Is very important not just to have public policies that are presented with ambitious goals, but we need to have collaborators and average people at home trying to reduce energy consumption through cooling, taking into account the process of the cooling process for the meals that come from Chiriquí and that are going to a greater consumption area here in Panama City. And we're not working on this through the National Energy Secretariat, but we need to try to conclude this process. Thank you very much, Rosilena. And as you know, I'm going to have to ask you another short question. From your point of view, in the framework of these efforts that Panama is undergoing, what is the role that you see so that the cooling pledge provides support to increase emission as well as the account rendition as part of the processes? Thank you. And yes, we have on the climate change legislations, we have one of the most article areas that has to do with the national funds for energy transitions, that one of them is energy efficiency, and we are hoping that this legislation is quickly approved to ensure to have resources so that citizens can have access to be able to have access to accessible financing to replace this, and we have to be one of the beneficiaries for these funds. These funds will have the state funds, and we're also opening for different financial mechanisms that may come from the international corporations and for the private sector. And actually, we have a pilot project that is evaluating the creating of a system that to enable the exchange of saying no to the subsidy of the electrical invoice while the state replaces and gets the panels, the solar panels. You can choose between a refrigerator or an AC for a more efficient, and we're hoping that we can also receive international funds, and we are working right now with the Rockefeller Foundation for its enabling. But it will be interesting to escalate the implementation of this project of something that can be nationwide, and why not include it among different activities to perform the different partnerships. Thank you very much, Rosilena. In the framework of what we are discussing and of the previous interventions of the keyboard, we have a problem. We have several problems, but we have one in particular that we are discussing in the framework of this discussion, which is that to face the increase of the temperatures and in the midst of the demand peaks and the temperatures and the heat demands, we are hoping that 2/3 of the world should have air conditioning equipment. China, India, Indonesia, half of them, it's a bunch of countries that are exposed to these changes. And on that same line, I wanted to consult Samira Sousa. If you're online, if you could tell us what Brazil is doing right now to maintain energy efficiency in the refrigeration sector, and why is this so important for the country? Samira, we can hear you. Well, good afternoon to all of you. Thank you very much, Luciano, for the question. It is a pleasure to participate to this panel and to contribute to such an important agenda for the country that has been represented for the region of Latin America and the Caribbean. And as you mentioned, country is an emerging country that it's part of the intertropical region of the world, and therefore we have a great potential to increase the air conditions, and we can be affected directly by the increase of temperatures and the greatest frequency of heat waves. And in our countries, since we have the energy matrix mainly by renewable energies and the impacts and the extreme events on the electrical supply is an issue of constant action, as well as the consumption of different devices and exercises. And currently, we are carrying out certain policies regarding the advances for the energy efficiencies and in our country. In 2022, our interministerial committee responsible for the implementation of the minimum standards for energy efficiency has approved the review of the synthesis for the domestic air conditioning that was started to be enforced this year. And it has a lot to do with the discussion and the manufacturers for the different society throughout the society. And after a very detailed assessment of everything in this year, 2023, we are hoping for the upcoming weeks to have the new index for our domestic refrigerators that are going to start being used starting 2024. This regulation has been intensely discussed, and both regulations already established a second stage with performance standards that are more strict, and we can start seeing it in 2026. It's also worth mentioning that we have a setup that has been granted by the Procel program in Brazil. The Procel program is a national electricity preservation that has been seen by the Mining Ministry, and it was projected by Electrobras, which is a state company that has become a private entity in the last year. And so starting from this year, they are now a new public company, and they grant the most efficient equipment for each categories for the environmental criteria. And in 2022, especially for the cooling equipment as well as for the air conditioners, this has developed a new category for Celo that is called Procel Oro, that highlights the equipments that are now reaching levels of efficiency. And tomorrow, also indicators that we're hoping to reach in the upcoming years. So for air conditioning as well as domestic areas that have been defined and the different policies. Here we could see the work for CLASP and the institution that support the different countries in policies of energy efficiency for the different equipments and a work for prioritization and what will be the most important equipments to be regulated and to have the minimum standards. And we've had a definition, and we are going to present this in the upcoming months for the society. And we are hoping to move forward with the regulation of refrigerators and commercial air conditionings as well as ventilator of fans or ventilators. And I also have to mention that we've had the support of UNEP and the initiative of United for Efficiency and with the coordination of Roberto Borjabab from Panama. And we've had proposals that have been established for the regulations that we are going to discuss from the stakeholders for commercial refrigerators. And we are also moving forward with the air conditioners. We also hope to move forward in the definition of the mandatory certification for buildings in the upcoming year because we need to improve the demand for the refrigeration equipments as well as lighting equipment and techniques on the construction area. We have an advanced discussion for a new governance in the construction sector where we could see all of the cooling equipment. I would like to mention that we at the Ministry of Energy and the entire government, we are headed a new direction with this new government that started this year to have an interministerial area and moving forward with the energy transitions and in terms of our efforts and also the energy efficiencies and the policies that we are moving forward, all the trajectories that have to do with this and to work with the whole population. And thank you very much for the opportunity and of working with us and for the pledge and for the rest of the COP and moving forward. Thank you. Thank you very much, Samira. Thank you very much for your leadership in this space and for adding to this panel and for sharing these experiences with Brazil, especially for making that link with the transitions and with the cooling pledge and refrigeration. And this came up at certain moments of the conversation, the issue of financing. This is why I wanted to ask Mr. David Vilar, Senior Energy Specialist and Program Leader for Infrastructure in Central America World Bank Group. If you could please tell us about the mobilization for the private sector for emerging markets that we could catalyze and maybe accelerate the development of the global cooling pledge. Can you hear me? Yes, I assume you can. Well, thank you very much, and allow me to thank you. Evidently, not always the improvement requires so much public-private partnerships. And we have to mention that the cooling pledge is not a signatory because we're non-member countries, but we do support the vision and we do approve the implementation of the cooling pledge and the commitments, and therefore, as long as the countries are signatories of this cooling pledge, this gives us an initiative to be able to support the countries. The signatory countries to finance this cooling pledge gives them an umbrella of support to the financiers, and it fits in the global movement of what we are trying to push at a climate level, at a climate change level. There is a non-reimbursable support, and also there are certain public manners. We have the public-private branch, but we need to study case by case. Each country has a certain maturity in certain sectors. It's not just for efficient cooling, but for according to the maturity of their market. And this could be starting or emerging or getting started, and depending on what instruments do we have to work, especially for other some that are starting and it's very efficiency. The support has to be through public support to incentivize, and little by little, then we will go and implement just to make sure that it's sustainable. And here we have other supports that multilaterals can offer in terms of guarantees. And when it's well developed, the multilateral support is not necessary because we can procure the funds through the capital and other companies. So here it depends on what countries are there, what support can we get, and World Bank in this case. We are having certain tools that I'm going to mention. One of them is Romaestro that has a cooling program that has been support for years, and it's providing support to over 30 countries at a technical support level and on regards to sustainable cooling support and of spatial areas, and also in cold chains for vaccines. Any topic that has to do with efficient, sustainable, and that it's accessible. We have this, and in this particular case, we have this regional support. We are providing support to the government in the case of the example of providing more efficient topics, and this is part of the support that we are providing. More or less, we have mobilized in 2 years, and we have leveraged approximately $4 billion. And with this map, we have been able to provide financing and an investment of $4 billion, and we're going to be able to save 47 million tons of CO2. And there are some public-private supports that, and to support a global cooling facility, we can support with financing the countries. And we have a financing to support 9 countries, and with this, GGCF is hoping to leverage $900 million, about which some of those countries are from the Latin American countries. We have Panama, El Salvador, and Panama. We're trying to find a way to use those funds to be able to present the policies of INO in the country. This GCF fund was approved in 2022, and it has 2 components. One of them is support to the policies that each country, as we can see, is very important so that the market can take off. If not, And then we are trying to find these funds to make more space. So this is basically what we are trying, what I wanted to share with you that we are supporting for the cooling pledge. Thank you very much, David, for your intervention. And well, from the previous interventions, we have identified the need for financing and for a sustainable cooling and to sustain the stage that comes for the global cooling pledge and for the transformation of our systems. And precisely regarding the transformation of the energy systems, I wanted to ask you, Medardo, what are some of the challenges and opportunities that you see for the OLADA transformation in comparison to the member state? Because many of those that are here in the region, and particularly how are you linking the promotion for just energy transition that is friendly with the environment? Thank you very much, Luciano. Thank you for the invitation to participate of this event, and what a pleasure to share with such great friends. And regarding this panel, well, when we're talking about challenges, we can we can have a very long list about the energy transition and what to do to make it equitable, to have equitable energy transition. And based on what we see from the organization is to reach a harmonious development for the regions that we see as cases of success, experiences, and we can see great asymmetries for the different countries and how to close those gaps about regarding communication and the key aspects and the fact that we are sharing good and bad experiences, because in this type of events, when we're talking about experiences that are shared, they're coming here to share other best experience, but we have to share our failures. Well, these are some of the failures or mistakes that we have made in public policies, and these are the mistakes that we've seen, and this is something that we need to rectify. I believe that this is an important aspect. But something that is very important that we need to highlight is that one of the great challenges of the transition in general is to close gaps, great gaps that exist in our society. In the concept note of this panel, I read that we are talking about a number of 65.5 million Latin American and the Caribbean people do not have access to cooling. I can tell you this from Olade. There are 16 million that do not have access to energy. And if I go more in depth, according to the World Bank, there are 82 million people in the region that survive with incomes that are less than $1.9 per day. And according to ICLA, 32% of the population of Latin America and the Caribbean lives in conditions of poverty and 13% in extreme poverty. These are the large gaps that we need to close, and here is where the decision makers have a real challenge and a great commitment to fulfill. And obviously one of the axes that we need to work on within this whole energy transformation and energy transition is the topic of energy efficiency, but the energy efficiency as a state policy, not as isolated initiatives, not as isolated projects, not as a list of good intentions. And for these public policies to be successful and that are based on indicators that we clearly need to have defined goals that will allow us to monitor the results of that public policy. It's fundamental that this public policy is based in formation and not perceptions. What is something that happens regularly? And here, I would like to stop here and talk about a project that we've seen that has to do with the construction of useful energy construction, something that was developed in 2017, and it's looking to go beyond of what is the balance for traditional energies. The energy balance is to make a match between the offer, the demand, following the whole path of the energy of the primary sources and transformation to reach to the different consumption areas. And the useful green energy is led in the different areas. We're talking about the industrial sector, transformation, residential area, and we try to investigate how the energy is used in each one of these sectors, what type of equipment is being used, what is the efficiency of each one of these equipments, and that information is what allows the decision makers to target the public policies to where it's supposed to go and how it has to be driven. I will give you data that comes from the experience of the project that we've been executing with the financing of the program Clima Plus in Panama, Paraguay, and Ecuador. Actually, the project in Panama has been concluded by the industrial, residential, and transportation sectors, and we are about to conclude with the commercial and service areas. In the residential sector, the study loss of useful energy gives us some very interesting area. At a residential level, in the process of refrigeration and ventilation of environments, 790 gigawatts represent 23.7% of the residential sector. Well, this number is a number like any other, but the interesting thing is what comes out of this consumption. The average performance of effective use is of 42.8%. This means that we're talking about inefficiencies that surpass 50%. And through this data information that we have done through the surveys and the samples on each one of the sectors that have been pointing out, we have been able to determine, for example, that regarding equipment distribution, the most efficient equipments for air conditioning, which are the inverter air conditioners that have an efficiency over 70%. The total of the equipments, only 23% of the equipments in Panama belong to this category. What does it mean? This means that there is a huge space to improve energy efficiency of the air conditioning systems in Panama. And there is another thing that is good. I don't know if it's good or bad. 84% of the air conditioning equipments have validity of 1 to 5 years. There are equipments that are between 1 to 5 years is good and it's bad. We're talking about modern equipment, but it's bad from the point of view that people have acquired those equipments, those air conditionings. So it's gonna be harder for them to tell them no, change your air conditioning to an inverter. Switch your split to an inverter, and we need to define the incentives so that those changes may occur. At an industrial level, we have determined that the coolant they use is smaller percentually than the commercial areas. But for the commercial and service I was saying, we are determined right now. We are reaching numbers that with the consumption, with those objectives, we surpass 55% of the residential consumption. So this information, I believe that all the Panama Energy Secretariat will have all of this information, but it's important to have this type of study because now, with this information, they know exactly where they should go, where should they point, where should the public policy go, and what type of incentives should you have so that your programs and policies of energy efficiency will, in fact, give you the results that we are looking for. Now, if you ask me about opportunities, well, now, here we're talking about a very important savings opportunity, but I heard something from the introductory in the opening remarks that is worth mentioning here. One of the great opportunities that we have to improve the conditions of efficiency in air conditioning is the implementations of energy districts. I had the opportunities to participate in an event 15 days ago in Cartagena where this topic was discussed exclusively, and I was able to visit. And I've never visited a cool generation plant and how can we improve the efficiency of living areas, and to reduce, practically eliminating for those localities the use of hydrofluorocarbons, that which is so damaging for the environment. This experience that has been highly successful in Colombia and that now has been assimilated for Chile, and it's assuming something that we have in Costa Rica, and that has to be broadcasters in the region, because it's one of the mechanisms where we can improve significantly technology and we can reduce these effects for the HPCs and the environment. Thank you very much, Merardo. And we could see, I hope that the data is available soon. And we are very grateful for your participations and from the different point of views that you have mentioned from OLADE as well as from the World Bank. And we invite you to approach the UNEP as well as the equipment, the team for the presidency of COP28. And these are parts, if you're interested, and the parties that are interested of joining the calling pledge, and the rest of the stakeholders to support its implementation, the high-level champions for COP27 and COP27. Maho Bendit and Her Excellency Rosana Mubarak, they have expressed their desire to keep on working with, we're working with UNEP for cooling results. In the Sharm checkup agenda, and also to incorporate targets for a race to resilience. To the organizations that are not countries, we invite you to join us through Race to Resilience and our partners, and this campaign to increase the resilience for 4 billion people, and this is one of the ways of doing it, supporting the implementation of the climate pledge. And we're here, and it's led by someone that is from a region. I understand, Maria Roselena, that you have a final reflection, but on my side, thank you very much to everyone for their participation, and we hope that you can join us to the cooling pledge, to the implementation of the cooling pledge, and also to the race of resilience to increase the resilience in our region. Thank you very much to everyone. Luciano, I am so sorry, but it's urgent for me. One of the comments is one of the things, since we have the opportunity to present the challenges and opportunities here. Right now, Panama is carrying out this national rural electrification plan. For the first time, Panama is carrying out this type of plans, and when we started to assess what are those energy needs, that we need to take a new census data told us that we have 58,000 families that do not have access to energy. That's approximately 250,000 people, and there is 150,000 people that live in a level of energy poverty. So the moment that you design this plan, you start thinking, okay, what are the needs of these families that don't have energy but want to have it, and how do you take these people that live, how do you take them out of this? And then do show scenarios that we can have for just a light bulb for the refrigerator, and that's it. That is not it. The role of decision makers is to ensure that this future needs that are living in an ever-changing climate, and the temperatures that Panama is having at night has increased those people, those families that do not have access to cooling, not to be more comfortable, but to live better, to be comfortable. We have to include them, and we're talking that we can implement these projects of $500 million to $750 million to ensure this. That is not just that we have just fair access to energy, but that we need to be adapted in a different way of how are we going to live, and that we're going to coexist to be productive, and that people have livelihood. I know, Azul, that you didn't want us to make another joke about this, but it's not cool and the moment that we look at private investment to leave aside this, and it's not cool, and I invite us to be cool and to do policy and promoting the creation of energy efficiencies, and to reach 2030 with universal access to energy, but the way that we deserve. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rosilena. And actually, a great deal of the panel that comes is focused on these panels that you were mentioned regarding the justice and transition of anti-corruption mitigation and energy and other aspects. Is right here in less than 5 minutes. You can have access through your QRs to the text on the Global Cooling Pledge, as well as the webpage of the Cool Coalition led by UNEP. And as I was saying, you are more than welcome to join the representatives of COP and UNEP to work on this. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for our panel members.